Welcome to episode 1 of The Equity Partner. And I'm extremely happy today to have my brother Rick Smith to join. I'll share a little bit about Rick and who he is and what he's done, and as most people can Google and find out. But Rick is an extremely, one, I love him like a brother. I admire him, and that's why I wanted to take this time to learn a little bit more about personally how he's managed, not only in his career, but also how he's managed throughout his life and just getting to where he is today. So the Equity Partner was created to just share ideas, share stories, introduce amazing people that have amazing stories, and also to have them share challenges, because some people have not gotten to the point where they've reached a certain level and they're striving to reach some certain level of success, and they need to hear from somebody. They need a mentor. They need somebody that can share that advice. So Rick, so I can give an intro of who you are. Rick Smith is a former EVP or Executive Vice President of the Houston Texans. He also was the General Manager of the Houston Texans from 2006 to 2017. He was born in Petersburg, Virginia. Also a graduate of Purdue University, and as a coach, he was a 2-time Super Bowl champ. So that tells a lot about his career and accolades. But Rick, thank you for joining, and we can kind of get started into the conversation.
Well, first of all, Jeff, I appreciate the opportunity to be able to share with you and to be on this platform. I applaud you for taking this on, because there's so much negative information, negative energy out there in the space right now. And so any opportunity that's there for us to provide a different voice to that, I think it's important to do. So I applaud you for doing this, man. I'm happy to be here with you. I do love you like a brother, because you are my brother. So it might be in law, but it's all good. So I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, well, thank you again. And I just wanted, Rick, I wanted you to share a little bit about just your background, kind of where you come from and how you got to where you are today.
Well, as you mentioned, I grew up, I'm from Petersburg, Virginia. And when I was a junior in high school, my dad, as you know, continued to advance his career. He was in education. He was a teacher. He was a coach. He kept going back to school, got his master's. He was a principal and assistant superintendent. And when I was a junior in high school, he got his first superintendent's job, his first opportunity to run, a major school system. And so he was named superintendent of the public school system in Dayton, Ohio. So we moved to Dayton, Ohio after football season my junior year. And so I was recruited out of the Midwest, which is how I ended up, as you mentioned, going to Purdue University on a football scholarship. Leadership has always been important to me, Jeff. And so, I've always been in leadership roles, whether it was, president of my student government in elementary school, or captain of the football team, or car number 1, driver number 1 in my driver's ed class. I've always just been in leadership positions. And so I was a captain at Purdue my senior year, damaged the nerves in my neck a little bit. So I missed a couple games at the end of the year. But because I was a captain and because leadership is important, I stayed around to kind of help what was going on. And subsequently, after my eligibility was exhausted, the coaching staff asked me to actually be a graduate assistant. And so for me, I felt like it was, I had an undergrad degree for free because I was a scholarship athlete, and it was an opportunity for me to get a master's for free. So my undergrad degree was in sociology and psychology, and I wanted to teach. And so I started my master's in that as a graduate assistant coach at Purdue. And right off the bat, I knew that coaching was something that the athletic realm was something that I wanted to continue to be in. And so so I coached at Purdue, and as you mentioned, I ended up leaving and went to the Denver Broncos as a coach and coached there. We won a couple Super Bowls, but every off season for me, it was spent, and we'll talk a little bit about this as we continue the conversation today. But it was about the off season. To me, it was about finding balance, because that life as a coach, particularly in the National Football League, it's intense. And it's easy to get off rhythm, and it's easy to get off balance. And so I would spend the off seasons finding that balance again, only to lose it again once the season started again. And so after a few years of that, I had to kind of sit with myself and figure out what is it that I really want to do, because I knew the kind of husband I wanted to be. I was single at the time. I knew the kind of father that I wanted to be. I didn't have kids. And so that's when I thought, okay, maybe the front office is a better track for me. I'm a global thinker. Coaching becomes a little bit one-dimensional at times. And so that was the opportunity for me, I thought, to stay in athletics, to stay in professional sports, to still make a difference, but move out of the coaching over to the front office. And that's what I did. And so I moved over. We won that second Super Bowl. John Elway was our quarterback at the time. His father, Jack Elway, was actually our director of player personnel. And when John retired, Jack retired a couple years later. I moved over from the coaching to the front office. And then I owe so much to Mike Shanahan for putting me in a position to learn everything that I needed to learn so that I could ascend to the role of general manager. And then in 2006, and so I moved from director of pro personnel to assistant GM in Denver from basically 1996 to 2006. And then I was hired in Houston as a general manager in 2006. And so that's basically my background from a professional standpoint. As you know, I've got 3 kids. I was married for 17 years. My wife passed away a year ago. So I've got 3 kids now. I've got a high schooler who's a junior, a middle schooler who's a 6th grader, and a lower schooler who's a 4th grader. So right now I'm playing janitor, I'm playing cafeteria guy, I'm playing teacher, dean, coach, principal. I'm doing all of that, and we're enjoying our time, even though it's a rough set of circumstances that we find ourselves dealing with this virus. It is an opportunity for us to come back and get back connected to the things that are important. And we're doing that here right now.
Rick, you spoke a little bit about just your ability to adapt to different roles, whether it's leading player personnel, defensive backs, going into the GM role, adjusting to also obstacles and challenges in your personal life. How has that changed you in general as a person?
Well, I think our life's circumstances really do shape and form the character of who we are, right? And so for me personally, I have a very, very strong faith. And so that is what I've organized myself around that. I believe that it's important, though, and I mentioned this, and so we might as well get into this. I think that it's real important to stay balanced. And so what do I mean by that? So all of our lives are organized. Let's just say that there are 4 areas of your life, because people talk about your mind, your body, your spirit. I add the soul in there from the standpoint of your mind is easy, right? It's your occupation. It's keeping yourself sharp. It's learning. It's continuing to grow. So it's easy to track your mental. Where am I mentally? Okay. Your spiritual connection is whatever it is that you believe, your faith, and however that exists for you and what that looks like for you. But are you dedicating time to your spiritual development, like your mental development? Your physical is easy. Are you eating as good food? Are you hydrated? Are you taking supplements? Are you exercising? Are you doing the things that keep you physically fit? Because it's all related. And then the 4th area that I talk about is the soul area. It's the social. It's your roles. Am I being a good husband? Am I being a good father? Am I present to my kids? Am I a good friend? Am I a good brother, big brother? How am I showing up in the community? So those 4 areas of your life, I try to organize myself around those. And then I can look at each one of those areas and make sure or see and check in whether or not I'm doing the things that I need to be doing in those areas to continue to grow. Because inevitably, when you're short on one of them, it affects the others. And so that's just an easy way to stay organized, right? And so you check in with yourself. Am I, spiritually, am I meditating and praying? Okay, physically, am I working out? Am I eating right? Am I drinking too much? Am I eating too many sweets? What am I doing? Am I off base there socially? Like I said, am I present? Am I doing the things that I need to do? And so you can check in with yourself from time to time when you find that you're off balance, because we all get off balance, Jeff, right? Life happens, circumstances affect us, and all of a sudden things are changing, and so we can get out of rhythm. A lot of people are out of rhythm right now because we're forced to be at home. And so for me, the way to get back into rhythm is very simple. It's not easy, but it's simple, and that's developing practices. So you develop practices around those areas. mentally, right? So, okay, so I'm going to read a book. I'm working on some financial. We're going to have some conversation around finances and financial planning and entrepreneurship and those kind of things. Am I doing the things that I need to do in order to advance myself in that? Am I staying in shape? Am I doing these things? So you can develop practices in those areas so that when you find yourself out of rhythm, off balance, you go back to those practices and they will get you back into rhythm. So it's not about falling out of balance, because we all do. We're humans. But what's important is to A, recognize that you're out of whack, right? And then B, find a way back. And so how do you find a way back? And for me, the answer to that has been developing practices.
Rick, tell me a little bit about how, you talked a little bit about developing practices. I look at everybody in the world has different personalities and characteristics. What has been the driving, motivating factor in you that has giving you the ability, one, to lead, and then two, to develop practices that can help you be successful?
Well, I think each individual is that, right? We're all our own people, and so people have different motivations and different things that push them and drive them. I believe, I've got a buddy, Michael Beckwith, and has a church in LA, and he basically says, you are pushed, and you're pushed in life until your vision pulls you, right? And so we grow up and we've got these things that we have to do. We go to school, we want a good education, we want a good career, we want to set ourselves up so we can take care of our families. And ultimately, it's about really, what is God calling me to do? What is my mission on life? What am I supposed to do? So what are the gifts that I have to deliver to the planet that it can be a better world when I leave here? I think we all, at some level, are wanting to contribute. We all want to create value. We all want to do things that help. We all want, the good life, right? And so how does that happen? And it happens through finding what it is that you are supposed to do and then expressing that. And that's one of the things that's happening right now. Unfortunately, folks are being furloughed, they're being laid off, people are losing jobs. But rather than look at that as cataclysmic, I think that it's an opportunity for some people to all of a sudden open up to the creativity that they really have, that they've not ever really explored, because they were working in a certain industry and they had to make ends meet and they had to go get a paycheck. And so all of a sudden, people get diverted into just living life. But here's an opportunity for everybody to slow back down, open up to what drives you, and express that. And that's a wonderful thing to be able to do, because what happens is, once you get connected to the source, your resources that you need to live your life, they start to show up, because that's just the way that it works.
Yeah. And I completely agree with that, Rick. I think faith has, one, driven you. It's also driven me in my career as well. And I think finding that source is extremely important to accomplishing anything you want to accomplish. One thing I read, prior to this interview, one thing I read about you was just your ability to set goals throughout your life. You had a period where you talked about your father and you got off track. And then you had to get back on track to prove to him that you were going to be the man that you wanted to be. And so just talk about setting goals in general and how that's really shaped where you are and where you feel like you're going.
Well, I think goal setting is an important aspect to any kind of development, because I think the Bible says that people perish for lack of vision, right? You have to have an idea of where you want to go. You can't go to the airport and say, I just want a ticket. You got to have a destination. And so goals organize your life. And so for me, for years, I was meticulous about setting goals, and because again, it gives your life direction. Now, I have evolved a little bit, and so at this point, as you start, because what happens is, here's one of the fallacies, one of the problems with goal-oriented people is they do this. They set a goal. This is me for years. Mm-hmm. You set a goal, and you work backwards from that goal, right? So what are the things that I need to do in order to accomplish this goal? You get all that organized, and then you get going on it. Then you got to have the discipline. So once you have those goals, then you got to be down with ODP, right? Mm-hmm. All right. So ODP is order, discipline, and practice, right? So once you have that goal set, You got your blueprint for how you're going to get there. Then you got to be down with ODP. You got to have order. You got to have it organized. You have to have the discipline to do the things that you have outlined that you need to do to reach that goal. And then you have to practice the things that you've outlined to do it, okay? Once you get to the goal, what do? You set another goal, right? So you're constantly setting goals. You're constantly achieving. You're having high levels of success. You're constantly achieving things. But along the way, Jeff, you can get lost in just the process of achieving goals, and pretty soon you're lost. You just don't enjoy the process. So what I tell people is, it's wonderful to have goals, and you want to be something, but you have to enjoy the process of becoming. So you have to celebrate those small successes that happen. But that becomes a function of being present, being grateful, expressing gratitude. So it's not just the attainment of the goal itself, but it is the expression of as you are moving through life. That's where I've evolved to here more recently is it's not as important to me as the end result anymore as it is about me being as good as I can be in this conversation with you right now. And when I leave this conversation, I'm going to go out there. My kids are waiting for me. We're going to clean the house up. We're going to decorate some Easter eggs later on. We're going to figure out how we're going to celebrate Easter, and I'm going to be present when that happens. And so, because what I just want to caution people, goal setting is very, very important, but goal setting keeps you fixated on the future. And what's more important is what is happening now. And so long as you can celebrate and be present now on your way to those goals, then it all works together,
And Rick, I think you reached a great point. I mean, I think so many people become so focused on their career that they lose sight of what's most important, and that's their family. And I think that's something that you have showed me of how you had to come back and revalue family and put family first. And I think you just hit a great point. So who's been a mentor to you? Who have you looked and modeled yourself after, whether it's just as a man or financially? Who's helped you along the way to kind of create the character that you have today?
Well, I've had plenty of them. Obviously, I'll start with my father, who was my best man in my wedding and has been a wonderful example for me as to what it looks like to take care of a family and to be the head of a house and to be a leader. Not only in the home, but then outside. I watched him, as superintendent of a school system manage, millions of dollars, thousands of people. I watched him do that, and it helped me when I found myself in similar roles, and particularly as a result, as it relates to kind of being out in the public, But then as I have evolved, I owe my career, a lot of the things that I've learned in my career, to so many, fantastic men in the National Football League and college football. I will say this as we kind of move over into conversation about financial planning, for example. I've got some really close friends, but one of my friends, a guy by the name of Kevin Warren. And Kevin was the COO for the Minnesota Vikings for a number of years, built the stadium that they play in now, and did a lot of great things for that organization with the Wilfs. Is now the commissioner of the Big Ten Conference. And about 10 years ago, Kevin gave me, we would have, conversations at the NFL league meetings, at the owners meetings, and we were always talking about how to be better. And he's become a bit of a mentor for me, but he gave me a document, man, that a little bitty document that was in the Wall Street Journal. And it's 25 documents you need before you die. And this is what the reason I want to mention this, because he's a bit of a mentor for me, but also this is just something as we find ourselves hunkered down in our homes with time to devote to things that we otherwise wouldn't, because we would generally be out moving and shaking and doing the things that we typically do and the speed that we do them with. But now that everybody has a chance to be in the home, I wanted to introduce this because this is just a dossier of you got time, collect your documents, collect your marriage license, collect your medical history, your power of attorneys, your wills. Everybody needs to have a will that's executed, not just it's put together, but it needs to be executed. Your housing, your deeds, your escrows, your bank accounts, your life insurance policies, your retirement accounts, your annuities, your pensions. You need to have all those things in a place, especially as leaders. If I just want to isolate right now to the head of the households, all of those documents need to be in a place where people know where to go get them. And even, your safe deposit box information, all of those things, you want to have your affairs in order. And this is, in my opinion, what I call estate planning, right? So estate planning is not just your will. It's not just your living will. It's not just it's all of those, it's having all of those things organized. So as you move through and start to develop these businesses, as you run your household, you've got things organized. And so you can easily go to your titles to your car. If you own your car, your vehicles, all those things are in a place. They're safe, and somebody knows where they are in case anything ever happens to you. Then they can go to that place, have those documents, and understand exactly how it is that you want your affairs to be run.
And I completely agree, Rick. One thing while you were talking, I said, I've been watching you without you knowing. So I have my legacy estate planning book right here at my desk. And I think it's extremely important. And sometimes life has to happen in order for you to make a decision to make a change in your life. So something negative doesn't happen again. And I can remember, I had a friend of mine in 2010 that passed away at 29 years old in a car accident. And it really showed me the value and importance of life insurance and why you should have it and how you should check your documents to make sure that the right people are beneficiaries of that life insurance policy. And I think sometimes we put off, what we can do today until tomorrow. But I think that's a great point, and what you have is a great resource. Kind of moving a little bit. Oh, sorry about that, Rick. Go ahead.
I'm with you. Great.
Moving a little bit into just your role as a GM, because I looked up the definition of a GM and some of the core responsibilities, and it really relates. You have to do so much as a general manager. You're almost the COO, the CFO. You're managing player personnel. You have to hire and fire. You have to make a lot of decisions that impact that organization, but it's all for the best of the organization. So with you being a GM, what lessons have you learned just about financial oversight and just making sure that you put your organization could be your household, but how to put that organization first?
Well, a couple of things. I think number one, it's that job is a big job because, like you mentioned, it's everything from the buses that we rent when we play an away game, to the hotels we stay in, to how much you pay the quarterback. So it runs the gamut of all of those departments and all of those decisions. When you talk about running an organization, or you talk about the complexities of that, I think what's important, there are a couple of things that I've always believed in from a leadership perspective. And you're right, we could be talking about leading an organization of thousands of people, or we could be talking about leading a household with 4. But a couple of real principles that are important is, number one, again, I go back to the vision, right? What are we trying to get accomplished? What are we? Who are we? What defines who we are? What are the qualities that define who we are? Okay. And once you understand, or once the leadership has articulated those qualities, I had to have a conversation with my kids a couple of weeks ago because I didn't like what I was witnessing that I saw in this house. We are full of love and grace and gratitude and appreciation, and I wasn't seeing that being displayed from my kids. So I had to, hey, we got to talk about this for a second, because I don't see the love and I don't see the cooperation that the compassion that I say we talk about. So how do we redirect and get back in line with and express the values that we say are important? So you have to have the definition and the vision of what it is. So from a football perspective, this is the kind of organization, this kind of team that we want to be. And so now we have to, once you know what it is that you want, now you've got to do a couple things. You've got to put a game plan in place to get the things done that you want to do, and you got to have the right people on board to get it done. As a leader, what I try to do, man, is I tried to articulate a vision, I tried to put an organizational structure in place that could achieve that vision. Then I tried to hire good people, right, that could do that. The most talented people that I could get.
Mhm.
And then as a leader, after you do that, after you set the organization, you set the vision, you set the structure of how you attain the vision, you get the people in place that you believe in. As a leader, the only other thing that you have to do is give them the tools and resources that they have that they need to do the job, and get out of the way and let them do the job. Now, what you also have to do is you got to hold them accountable, right? And so the only way for me that I felt good about holding people accountable is that vision had to be clear. So you understood your role in that entire vision. And so why is your job as important as any other job? Because none of them are more important than others, because the whole thing doesn't work if you don't do yours, right? And so I'm very clear about what the goals and expectations are, so that I can reward you and celebrate you when you do it, and I can hold you accountable, or maybe help you shift if you're not doing what it is that is consistent with us reaching our goals. And so that's kind of how I manage, man, from a philosophical perspective. I just believed in set the vision, put the structure in place that you can achieve the vision, get the right people, get the right people in the right spots, and then hold them accountable and praise them. And that's how I did it.
Yep.
And you can apply that in any, so I could go to the training room, and the doctors and the trainers and the PT people and the strength conditioning coaches. I could use that model there. I could go over into the equipment room. I could do the same thing. I could go to my scouts and have that system the same way. Even though they have individual things that they're doing for the organization, they all understood what the big picture was, and they all understood how their role fit. But then that model then even drills down into their particular areas.
I got you. Great. And Rick, even as a general manager, one of the other things that you're able to see and kind of oversee is the pitfalls and the successes of individuals coming right out of college and going into an organization. Now they're high-paid employees. Not only did you went from being a coach, being a coach, and then kind of elevating yourself up the executive channel. How do people that are either taking on new opportunities, large amount of earnings, whatever that might be, adjust and adapt to newly being in a situation where now they're a little bit more financially more healthy, and just the adaptation and the adjustment period? What have you seen to be a success, and what have you seen to be a pitfall?
Well, I think number one, I think financial literacy just historically has not been something that as a community we've talked a lot about, and so I think educating yourself is really, really important. That's why I applaud you on what you're doing with this, Jeff, because it's significantly important, because most of us don't grow up having conversations about 401ks and trust and LLCs and how you protect yourself, or life insurance, and should I do whole life or should I do term life, and those conversations about the differences and the advantages of one versus the other, right? And so I think the first thing is we just need to have more education. We need to have these conversations. We need to do as much as we can in the way of learning and growing our knowledge around financial planning and wealth, right? So I think that's the first thing. What I did, we did a thing. When I was in Denver as the director of pro personnel, one of the areas that I was responsible for was our player development. So you're right. You get these college guys that come into the NFL, for example, from my background, and they have this tremendous influx of cash that they've never had before. Yeah. So how do you manage that? And there's all of these responsibilities that come along with that. And so Rod Smith and Rod was a player for Denver at the time, and he had a book that I think it's Robert Kiyosaki. It's called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Mm-hmm. And Rod swore by that book. And it was just a book to kind of teach you how to organize your thought process around finances. And again, it's just the importance of being educated and knowing, some of the tools that are available to you. And so we put a financial literacy program together as part of our player development. And it was just a function of teaching guys the basics. Mm-hmm. How do you go and establish a checking account? What do you do? How do you get automated, your things automated so you can pay bills. Now, that was 20 years ago, right? So things are so much more automated now, and it's a lot easier to do those things. But I think if I'm a young person and I'm starting a career and I'm newly out of college or just new into a career where I have an influx of cash, I have the ability now to save, I have the ability now to establish my financial portfolio. Education is very, very important because you need to learn what it is that is available to you to achieve your goals. And if your goals are to save money and to have a retirement plan, if your goals are to buy a house, if your goals are to buy a car, you have to understand what it is that you want to get done. And then you've got to work backwards from that. And there's a multitude of things that are available to you: CDs, the stock market, real estate investments. There's all kinds of ways to earn money and for your money to earn revenue for you, income for you. You just kind of got to know what your goals are, because then that will then dictate which avenue you go, right? And then how much risk you're willing to take on, how conservative you are, how aggressive you want to be, how old you are, that it might play into how aggressive you can be because you got a little bit more time. There's all of these conversations that you can have, that you need to have, so that you select the right approach and the right avenue to go get the goals that you've set for yourself.
Rick, with setting goals, I mean, who do you have on your team to protect your assets, to help you with financial planning? What people have you viewed as your trusted advisors?
I believe in building teams, obviously, right? And so I do think that it's important to have counsel. Bible says that wise men seek wise counsel, and so I have a bunch of different people. I have an attorney, an estate attorney who does really good work that's helped me develop and organize my estate planning stuff. I've got a financial planner who who's helped me. And again, those conversations that we just talked about, I've had those with them. I've got a banker who has helped me because, when you are trying to operate in the world, very often you need to borrow money. And so I've got a relationship with a wonderful banker here in town. I've got another guy who is my insurance advisor. So what kinds of insurance options, products that are out there for me. So, and then I've got friends, Jeff. I've got people like you that we've talked about investments over the years, and with your knowledge of the banking industry, I think you owe it to yourself to cultivate relationships with people who have expertise in those different areas. Because again, you want to educate yourself on what are the opportunities that are available to me, and then how is the best way for me to move through this to achieve those goals. And so I've got a bunch of guys that are on my team that, if depending on which area that I'm interested in thinking about, I can make a phone call or pick up a book. There's so much information that's available to us. Again, if you don't have these friends, you don't have these people that are available to you, the information is available to all of us now because we have this thing called the internet. And so they're reputable articles from magazines or books, whatever the subject is. And then I just believe that if you open up to the inquiry, the question, the answer is already there. You just got to just open up to the question, and you'll find the answer. But I believe that you definitely need to be seeking the right kind of counsel.
And Rick, with those trusted advisors that you've had to help you, that have counseled you on whether it's finance, legally, from an accounting perspective, what value outside of preparation, or let's say it's an accountant for example, what value have they brought to you outside of just the normal service of what they do on a day-to-day?
Well, and I think that this is why you have to cultivate the relationships. And so you mentioned the accountant. So I didn't even mention, but I do have an accountant, of course, who primarily is for tax purposes. And so, they are preparing my tax returns annually. But I will give you an example. So a couple of years ago, there was a change in the tax laws at the end of the year. And I had a habit of here in Texas, our property taxes are due January 31st. And you get the bill somewhere around October, November, but you have until January 31st to pay. And I had a habit of paying at the end. I wanted to keep my money in my account and earn as much interest as I could, as long as I could. And when it was time for me to write the check, I would write the check. And but this particular year, because the tax laws were changing when President Trump took office, it was beneficial for me to pay in December of that previous year, because I would take advantage of the tax change.
Yeah.
And so my accountant calls me and says, "Hey, I know you typically do it this way, but here's why you need to do it, or here's why you need to think about paying your property taxes before the year ends, because you will realize this benefit." And so it's those kinds of things that it's not only just producing a tax return for me. It's because we have the relationship, because I spend time when I'm with my accountant, and my accountant and all my team, they know what my objectives are. They know what my challenges are. They know where I'm trying to go and what I'm trying to do. So everyone's on the same page about what that looks like. And so I can take advantage of everyone's expertise. And so she was able to call and say, "Hey, you need to pay your property taxes and before the calendar year ends, because you will realize this benefit." And that's just one example of the expertise that you get who are experts in their field, which is why that's why you pay for their service.
That's right. That's exactly right. I always say it's important to hold those trusted advisors accountable, because they're invested in you and you're invested in them. And so I think that's a great point, Rick.
Well, and I also think when you say that, because you bring up a good point. You are the boss in this conversation we're having, right? It's your financial future. It's your income, your money, your family that you're trying to protect. And so as you solicit and gain everyone's opinions about things, at the end of the day, that's why it's so important to be educated. And because at the end of the day, you have to make the decisions that are best for you and your family. You can take all the information in that you want, but you have to understand that those decisions that you make are yours to make, and they're not someone else's to make. They're not the analysts to make. That you make the decisions, and so you've got to make sure that you understand and ask questions. And listen. There's a difference. Ignorance is I'm ignorant in a wide variety of subjects, right? And that just means I don't know those subjects. It doesn't mean that I'm not intelligent. Doesn't mean that I'm anything other than just ignorant in that sense, because I've not taken the time to learn. When I open up to learn something, then I lose my ignorance and I become informed on the subject, right? And so a lot of us are intimidated by these financial subjects, by the complexity of certain things, because we don't know them. And what I'm just encouraging people to do is to not be intimidated by that, but to step into it and learn, so that you can make informed decisions. And the more you do it, the more you learn, the more you do, the better off you will be. And then the more complex you can, because there's all kinds of things that and things that are available to us as we move, into our financial, development. So I just would encourage people to not be intimidated because they don't know, and they feel that they don't know, the answer. First of all, read about it, learn about it, talk to people about it, gain some modicum of idea of what it is that you're doing, and then make decisions, and then and then move judiciously, right? Move in a way that is not too aggressive until you are confident. And when you become confident, you can move. And we've all made mistakes in our financial, lives, and so that's a part of it as well. So don't be afraid to do that. You just gotta kind of know what it is that you are able to risk, and what you're able to risk, you move, but that's the way you learn.
Exactly. I truly believe in that statement, Rick. I think a lot of people think just because I don't know, then they should put all their trust in that advisor. I think you have to do your research. I mean, I know for just based on experience, especially as it relates to legal documents, it's important to know what you're signing. It's important to know, even if it's a bank document, it's important to know what you're signing and what you're agreeing to. And if you don't understand something, ask the question. And I think that was a great point you mentioned. One question.
Yeah, Go ahead.
One question I did have as well, Rick, was it was just about, I know a lot of people now are dealing with change in their lifestyle, whether it's related to, job loss or just the concern that their income might fluctuate or change. In the sports industry, there's it's almost like athletes and executives are independent contractors, where they sign a deal and then they don't know at the end of that deal whether they'll be re-signed or not. And so you have to deal with a lot of income fluctuations. And so just based on your experience, what you've seen, and also in your personal life, what advice would you give to somebody that has to deal with the loss of a job or fluctuating income that's not consistent on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I think what I would say probably is everybody knows their individual situation, and so if you have a job where it's a seasonal position, for example, and you are counting on this income to be your income for the year, then you have to plan that way, and you've got to budget that way, right? And so, for example, I had this conversation with rookies for years because I don't know if most people know, but NFL players are paid over 17 weeks. The NFL season is a 17-week season, and so you come in and training camp in July, and you get per diem. You don't get paid until the season starts, but once the season starts, you get 17 checks. Well, there's 52 weeks in a year, and 17 of them you get paid, right? So you have to plan for all of that. And so it's no different in a seasonal occupation for someone. If they know that they've got a limited amount of time to have income, earned income, then you've got to look at your budget from a 12-month perspective and budget your money accordingly. It's no different than and again, a lot of this is it takes time, Jeff, to spend time with your finances, right? It takes time to sit and look at what do I spend, from a calendar perspective. It's a lot easier now because a lot of us use credit cards, and so we can look at our credit cards and we can get an idea what are we spending. And I think household budgets are significantly important. Because if you don't know where your money is going, you can't ever get control over it, and you can't make good decisions. And so it's very, very important to establish a household budget so that you know where your funds are going, so that you know where the expenses are, and where the passive act, how the discretionary money that you can spend, that you get to go and buy, a new outfit this month because you got some discretionary spending. But 2 months from now, when your expenses are a little bit more, when you've got something that's due, you may not be able to do that. If you have a budget, then you take control over that, and so your money now doesn't become an adversarial relationship. A lot of people have an adversarial relationship with money because they're coming from a place of lack. It just never seems to add up. It never seems to be enough. I can never do as much as I want to do. Well, if you can gain some idea, some understanding and awareness of what's coming in, what are the expenses, it gives you the ability to decide where you spend your money and how you save your money. And so I would tell you that establishing a budget is really, really important because it gives you that information that you need to be able to budget your money across the 12 months or however long it is until you get back into a situation where the income is coming, where it's flowing in on a regular basis. And so that's just generally speaking what I would say for those kind of industries, for those kind of jobs, for people who are in those types of situations, is to establish a budget so that you can save enough when you have an influx of cash to last when you don't.
And that's a good transition to the next topic, Rick, just about investments. And you talk about when you have an excess of cash. There are families that have built up excess cash over time. They got a new job. They received a bonus, or they receive even a small amount of cash. Let's say they received a stimulus check, and they're trying to see what to do with that excess cash. How should I be investing and diversifying my money? tell me a little bit about, what you've done outside of the NFL that has helped you create some other sources of income.
Well, I think I'll digress for 2 seconds because you just mentioned something that I wanted to say earlier, and that is the diversity piece, right? So you don't, when you mention just throw all your money in one place, you do want to be diverse in how you go about. Okay. So I think one of the things that's critically important when you start to talk about investments is to ensure, and this is what I did. You asked me what I did, Jeff, and what I did is, um, you know, early on in my career, and when I was making a certain amount of money and living a certain lifestyle, I did so with credit cards. And so the first thing that I had to do when I started to develop some awareness around my finances was to realize how much money I was actually paying in credit card fees and in interest. And so I wanted to establish I wanted to get my savings account up. A lot of people talk about 3 months worth of savings, 6 months worth of savings before you invest, because you do want to have the ability to have cash. And so I would tell you the very first thing that I would do, the first two things that I would do is I would try to, number one, eliminate debt. And then number two, I would try to save and get cash up to about 3 to 6 months worth of your expenses in cash. And then you have cash available so that if an opportunity becomes available to you, then you have the ability to do so because you've got your cash reserves that are built up. And so it requires patience. But I would not advise, and I'm not a financial advisor, but I would not advise anyone to participate in any investment if you have thousands of dollars in debt and credit cards. The first thing I would do is I would pay those credit cards down and off because it's costing you money. And so, what you have to look at is, what is the interest rate on the credit card that I'm paying versus what I could potentially, the interest that I could potentially, or what I could potentially earn on this investment. And 9 times out of 10, that credit card interest is going to be more. So you want to get that down, get your cash reserves built up, and then you can look to see where are the opportunities for me to invest. Now, in the meantime, in between time, you could take a tool, for example, a life insurance policy, right? So if you have, let's just say you've got, $10,000, $15,000 in credit card debt that you're paying off. You got a student loan and you are just starting to build your cash reserves. I would tell you to continue to build those cash reserves, pay those credit cards down. But if you really want to get started, but you're just itching to get into the market, or you're itching to do some kind of, then look at a whole life policy if you don't have any insurance right now. Because you could talk about maybe investing in a whole life insurance policy that does two things for you. Number one, it gives your family the insurance that it needs in case something happens to you. But the difference between term life and whole life is term life is just strictly insurance. You buy term life, and whatever that face of that policy is worth, if it's $1 million policy, your family gets $1 million. That's a term, and it's for a certain amount of time. Most of the time it's 20 years, 30 years. That's why it's called term. Then the other type is whole. And so the reason I mentioned whole, if you're just itching to get going, is whole life insurance policies, they end up acquiring value that you can end up borrowing off of, but it's more like an investment. So if you want to get your documents, your portfolio in order, and you got some things that you need to do to kind of build up before you can really start to go and maybe put some money in a real estate investment or more money in the stock market. But as you're working to get your financial package together, that's an option for you because it's also giving you the ability to get your family insured. So again, there's all kinds of ways to do it. I just think that the most important thing is to save, get your cash reserves built up, and eliminate any debt that you have, because the debt is costing you money. Now, unless it's cheap debt. Yeah. We can talk about that on another conversation, right? Because there are opportunities, there are situations where it behooves you to go and borrow money, because what it costs you to borrow that money is you're going to make that up in the investment, right? So there's reasons to, and again, this is all conversations that you can have when you know what it is that you want to accomplish and what you want to achieve, and you work backwards from that. So there's all kinds of ways to do it.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Rick. I think everybody's personal situation is different. I do think you provided some good insight just about how to eliminate debt first. We all have gotten to a point where we either have too much credit card debt, or we purchase cars or houses, and it's just too much on us when we don't have enough cash reserves in case of a loss of a job or something like that. So I think those are the great points just to present. One of the things I wanted to ask you as well, Rick, was just a little bit about I think a lot of people talk about success they've had, but they've also had downfalls as well, where they made some mistakes. You talk a little bit about how credit cards initially were something that you wanted to correct. What was the biggest opportunity that you've had that has had a positive financial impact on your life? What's an investment that you've made and that you said, you know what, I'm glad I diversified and I did this to have another source of income?
Well, for me, I invested in the stock market. I have a 401k, obviously, with the NFL, and looking to grow my portfolio was kind of playing in the stock market and not really making any real significant gains or losses, but just kind of playing that a little bit. And a few years ago, I moved over into the commercial real estate space. And I have a friend that has been doing that for years, and he provided an opportunity for me to invest and basically in building and leasing out a couple of Starbucks stores. And so just kind of getting my feet wet in the real estate game was really something that really sparked my interest. Number one, was very profitable for me. Number two, and so that's kind of where I play now. I don't do a whole lot in the stock market. In fact, I took money out of the market a couple of years ago to do another investment on the real estate side because it was so profitable for me. And so I enjoyed that. I like being able to go and look at the project and be able to talk to the people and and even in that game, I've got at this point now, because I've got a pretty broad profile with that. I have, it just depends on what your goals are, right? So there's these situations where we go in and we'll build a suit and then we'll sell it to an investor who wants to come in and own. Or there's other plays where we keep something because we want residual income coming in every month, right? So it just depends on what the goals and objectives are. But for me, it was the real estate. It was in particular the commercial real estate.
Yep. And I think a lot of people don't have either access or haven't researched enough about commercial real estate. Because what you're speaking about is when you talk about build to suit, or you talk about a commercial real estate project and being able to lease it back, it's a development project. It's a development opportunity for you as an investor to seek a return. And you had a relationship with the individual that has experience with those types of projects. And it all came together to work out for not only him, but for you as an investor. And so I think those are things that we as a community should look into, find more about, and see if that's an opportunity that we can research.
Absolutely. And again, there's all kinds of ways to get into the market, right? And not just the stock market, but into an opportunity to develop your financial portfolio. And you should have diversity in that portfolio. But again, I believe that the first things first, get your debt under control, get your cash flows up so that you have the flexibility when an opportunity presents itself. You have the protection, number one, in case anything happens, right? So if your cash flows are built up, your debt's down, and you have your cash flows, you have the ability to respond to an emergency, but then you also have the ability to respond to opportunity as well.
Yeah. Well, Rick, you've answered a lot of the questions that I've had for you. Is there anything else that you have to kind of share with anybody that might watch this video? And first and foremost, I want to thank you for at least taking the time out to speak to me. I appreciate you, my brother. And I definitely wanted to make sure that you had a last word before we leave.
Well, I don't. I guess I would just say that just generally speaking, Jeff, I believe that this this pandemic, this time we find ourselves in, is a real opportunity for all of us. It's an opportunity for us to come back to center to the things that are important, to our health, to our families, and I believe that it's an opportunity for there to be a shift. Things were going so fast, we're moving and so busy in our lives that it was easy for us to just move and not contemplate, and not be present. And this is an opportunity for all of us to come back to center, back to those things that are important. And so I just encourage people to take advantage of this opportunity, take advantage of this time. Some of the things that we talked about in this conversation, around just organizing your finances, getting an idea, getting closer to your kids, being a little bit more present about what's happening with them. I think it's an opportunity for us to really come back to the things that are important. And so, I appreciate participating in this with you today. It's been good to be with you, and I look forward to when the travel bans are lifted, you and your beautiful wife, my lovely sister, and those kids come on down here to Houston and spend some time with us, man. But I appreciate being a part of this today.
Yeah, well, thank you again, Rick. Thank you for those that had a chance to watch it, and thank you for being a partner in my success, and hopefully we're a partner in your success. Thanks again, Rick.
Take care. Thanks.